Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Bioshock Survivor Difficulty Brass Balls walkthrough. This is Arcadia, and this is the first of two parts to this mission. Then we'll be going to the Fisherman's Market, and then we will be leaving for Fort Frolic, which is one of my favourite areas of the game. This is a tough level, this, because it's a very open level, and there's a lot of fights against Rosies, and the Rosies at this point are still kind of on the edge of being quite difficult. You do have the facilities to kill them, and you do have some really, really powerful tools, but they're still at that point where they're more of a threat than you would like. And the Big Daddies are going to be that way for most of the game, because they never stop being a true threat. And depending on what you want to do with the game, at the end of the game I stopped even going for Big Daddies, because I had so much Adam and I had nothing to buy. And I think it's because I wasn't upgrading my life, which didn't really affect me too much. You know, I didn't struggle with low life at all. It kind of made the game fun, you know. It made it so that I had to approach Big Daddies with really good strategies, because if I didn't, I just got killed. And even with good strategies, the Big Daddies could instantly kill me very quickly. And it really led to me not understanding the damage properties on the Daddies, because there were times when I would get hit and I'd just be dead, and there were other times when I'd get hit and it wouldn't do the same damage, so there must be some kind of hit registration of it. And you can see it often with the Rosie's grenade. If the Rosie's grenade hits you flush, you're dead. But there are times when it seems like it hits you quite flush and you live. So there must be some random spread on the explosion, some random detection or something, but whatever it is, it leads to some pretty interesting encounters. And right now, we're being lured by a Houdini splicer. He's potentially the first one we've seen, so we want to get all the way up on the research facility of him. So take as many photos as you can. It's going to pay off. But the Houdini slicers are not bad. They take good damage. You can do a lot of great things with them, because all they do is teleport around throwing projectiles. Houdini splicers are generally more fun than anything else, because they don't stick around long enough to do really good damage. It's one of the better aspects of them. I do feel like there should have been instances where they threw Houdinis at you with something like thuggish splicers, and they made it so that the Houdinis were causing havoc while the thuggish guys were rushing you down. But the game does mix up the enemy types a little bit, but it's never a combination that makes you go, Jesus, this is tricky. And I don't know if the challenge mode introduces anything like that, because I've only played one mission, and my god was it weird. I've never played anything like it. And I don't know if you've played the missions on this game, but I had no bullets, I had no guns, and I had to go around the level like it was Broken Sword, or some shit like that, Adventures of Monkey Island, picking up stuff to use to unlock the next sequence of the mystery, to get this Big Daddy to be killed by turrets. And it took me like 40 minutes to figure it out, but I did it, and it felt kind of good, but it's not my idea of what I like to do in Bioshock, so as much as it was cool and it was different, it was so different to what you do in these games. I would have preferred to just shoot some shit. But I really like the idea of what they did, and I think it's really cool. And like you had to get components to build things, get a plasmid to step on a Big Daddy, to pick up the last component, to build an auto hack, to hack a turret, to unlock a door. It was all kinds of really crazy MacGyver stuff. So if you've never tried them, they're actually in this remaster, so you can try them for free. Technically not free, you did buy it, but you know what I mean. And see if you like them. And I think I'm going to try is it Clash in the Colosseum that they added to Infinite? Because I'm not a big fan of arenas and gauntlets in video games. I just don't need it. I like Boss Rush, but I don't like, here's a million enemies in 5 waves with no checkpoint. That to me is just kind of, it never gelled. I don't know why. It's just my tastes. I was never a big fan of Ninja Gaiden's mission modes, because I just felt that they were all ridiculously unbalanced and far too long, and it made them really gauntlet and enduring-y and kind of sad. I never really liked the Bloody Palace. I kind of liked it on 3, because I liked 3 a lot, and I got really good at one point on that game, back on the PS2, so I absolutely murdered it there. But I still would have never gone like, I'm going to spend the rest of my life in here, because it's just not my idea of a good time. Equally, on Devil May Cry 4, I find the palace to be boring, which is kind of sad, because I really like the combat of that game. It's just, it starts off too easy, and it's too easy for a really long time. This is an interesting trap right here. We have, I think it is a leadhead splicer up on the balcony, and a thuggish splicer, and it might be a nitro splicer actually. He's going to blow up the petrol in front of us, and it's going to set me on fire. Because I got a little bit too savvy with trying to trying to take pictures. So he's up there. Oh no, I set it off, my bad. So I set off my own trap. Awesome. Subject research complete, Chris. You've got him. Stop it. Stop wasting the film. So you can go into first person on this game, but it's kind of awkward. It's the same controls of Ubisoft's Rainbow Six, if you ever played them, where you push the right analog in to go into aim down sights, and I've never liked that control scheme. Never ever liked it, not once. And it's kind of reminiscent of Halo back in the day, isn't it? Because you could push the analogs into scope, but everything else was kind of hipfire, so it's definitely the remnants of early systems, but to me, ever since I played like COD 2, that was it for me. Or even COD 1, because COD 1 was a great game. The ADS was so revolutionary, and I don't think it created it, but it was one of the first experiences I had with it, where it was just, this has changed the way we shoot. And I always missed it when I went to games that didn't have it. Nowadays, because ADS is everywhere, I kind of miss the hip stuff. I kind of miss, just shooting old school, Doom, Half-Life, Halo, I kind of miss that. But in this room, we've got a turret, we've got a couple of dudes. I fire a grenade because I'm not using them, and I want to feel like I'm actually using my tools, but at the moment, telekinesis is really strong, but I need to kill somebody because there doesn't seem to be many things to pick up here. I don't know why I didn't shock the turret and go for it first, but I'm prioritising enemies in the way that I'm doing it. I'm going to pick his body up, Chris. Start chucking him at people. It's fun. As I duke it out in this doorway and look for things to pick up. The turrets as well. The turrets are way worse on the harder difficulties. I'm playing on easy at the moment, picking up collectibles, and it's kind of really funny just to see how different the game is. Here comes the hack. We get the turret on our side. I just heard somebody trigger, so there's a splicer behind us, or potentially below us. Some woman is talking. I love the sound design on Bioshock. When the splicers talk, they tell you exactly where they are. If you're wearing a good headset or you've got good surround sound, you know exactly where they are, and I love that. I love the idea that the game is giving you information almost organically, and you can react to it and use it to your benefit. She's jumping, so stop her. There's a dude behind him. Oh, there's the gun. Just stand there taking it on the chin. But I read a comment the other day mentioning about the shooting in Bioshock. Somebody thinks the shooting has aged the worst. And I understand what they mean, but I don't think it has. And I don't say that just to be, the polemic, just to disagree with somebody. I like playing as devil's advocate. It's not that at all. I would say that I disagree with it a little bit because the aiming has always been shit in Bioshock. It's always been fiddly. It's always been very specific. It's always been harder to get the target on people, and it didn't feel like you ever felt precise or it was ever good enough for what it needed to be for just how slippy the enemies were. And that's always been a Bioshock thing. Like, when you look at a lot of the reviews for Bioshock, they would mention how the world was great, how the plasmids and the strategy was great, how the story was great, but the shooting was always the thing that got criticised, because it wasn't as good as its contemporaries at that time. And this game compensates for that by giving you this incredibly overzealous auto-aim. So if you played the original Bioshock on the 360, the auto-aim is nowhere near as generous as this game. It makes you earn the shots, and it means it can be quite tricky. A good example would be, if you play this game with the crossbow, hitting people with the crossbow can be tricky when they're moving, even with the auto-aim. Well, the entire game was like using the crossbow back in the day. So it seems like they've super tweaked it up, and I don't know if they tweaked it when it went to PlayStation 3, and that's where it's come from, or if they tweaked it for this remaster. But what I can tell you guys is I do not remember fighting my aimer as much as I did in this game. And I've played the game on PC as well, and I don't remember it being the same there. So it's one of those weird things of, they definitely upped it to try and make it feel better, because it is night and day different to playing those other shooters. I don't think it's that much of a bad thing, though, because to me, the shooting in this game was always tertiary, so it wasn't a problem. I think there's elements of that still exist in Infinite. I think, of course, Bioshock 2 did it a little better because it enabled you to use plasmids and a weapon at the same time, so it was less about the awkwardness of the shooting and more about, the systems being fun. But why do you think that they sell you on this 1-2 punch combo? The idea of stunning somebody with electricity and then shooting them. A lot of the abilities on this game freeze your enemy. And it's a deliberate design because the shooting isn't there. And I think that if the shooting was there, it would probably reduce the importance of a lot of these plasmids. So on the one hand, I do agree with the guy who said that, because the shooting in this game has never been top tier, but it was good enough for what it needed to be. And as far as the things that haven't aged, I guess if you didn't really realise that the shooting wasn't great, then you probably do think that it's definitely aged, because if you come to this from playing Black Ops 3 too much, you're going to think this game handles like shit, because it just will. But if you remember how it handled back in the day, it's always been that way. And I don't think adding auto-aim is the best way to remedy this, but I think it's an interesting way, and it's the way they chose. But just a little bit of food for thought there, guys, and on some different opinions on how the game has aged. This is a Big Daddy. This is a Rosie that's fighting with a dude, and I don't know if you've noticed, but this Rosie is a killer, and it's not taking a lot of damage. And I'm always hesitant to start fights with Big Daddies when I don't have a setup I like, and right now, I don't have a setup I like, and I don't have particularly a good power position here where I can trap the Big Daddy and take advantage. But what I do know is I killed this motherfucker 3 times because I kept forgetting to save, so by the end of it, I'd got pretty decent at understanding how it was going to move. So my idea is a simple one, but I'm not too sure how effective it is. I'm going to put a ton of proxy mines here, because I'm going to lure the Big Daddy into the sewer area, and I'm going to use the walls to kind of mess with his pathing, or her pathing. Because there are times when she'll be really aggressive, and there'll be times when she just stands her ground, and I want to get her to stand her ground so I can hit her with some good hits. I could reload cancel the shooting of this gun, because you can skip the animation of the bucking and the view kick of it, and you can go back into a shooting animation, but I only really need it when I have to act fast, and in this particular scenario, I know that I can't kill this thing quick enough to validate doing it, so instead, I'm going to try and bait her down here. But there's a problem with this. The leaves, all that kind of shit, they can shoot through, they can see you through, so it's not very good cover. You want to put yourself through something she can't see through, like this. This is really good, but you'll notice she's also an expert marksman and she has wicked timing. So I'm going to do the old juking, bobbing out shooting and keep this piece of wood between us, and then I'm going to back up again, try and get to another corner, which is this one, and then just repeat. And that's a problem. Did you see what that was? That was the residual trail of a Houdini splicer. So this is not the best place to be fighting, so I get the hell out of there, and I'm going to go and get in the back of her and start firing grenades. I've got a lot of medkits. I know how to play the game, so I'm not worried about this scenario at the moment. It's going okay. I haven't used too many resources. We've got a lot of money, got a lot of ammunition. We just need to keep chipping away. There comes another splicer, which is always a bad idea. I think she got knocked over then by the Rosie, so I'm going to pop the shotgun on, or the armor piercing on the Tommy gun, and hope she comes here, because if the Big Daddy does, I'm just going to shoot it. Interesting that something that's called a daddy could be called Rosie. I guess I've never drawn that parallel. So there's the splicer, not too sure what it's doing. This is the wrong ammunition for a splicer, so I should be changing it as I go and try and do a dodge, but I clip on the wood, because the clipping in this game is not aged the best, but it came out quite early, and clipping is always a problem. Clipping is still a problem. I don't think we'll ever master it until it gets to the point where the machines can handle so many polygons and vertices that we can model things to be one-to-one and perfectly accurate. And at this moment, it's not a good idea, because if you think of it like this, if you've never modeled anything, the more polygons that are in a model, the harder it is to render it, the longer it takes to be processed, because it has to take in all that information. So if you make something wickedly detailed on a wireframe perspective, and it's something simple like a tree post or something, or like a bench, and you've given it a million different polygons to make it, like the modelling itself is all curved and crazy to give it grooves and ridges and details and a rustic feel and what have you. Gaming generally does that with texture work and bitmapping, and it does it because it's easier to do that and it's not as intensive on the system. If you do that with modelling, shit gets a lot harder, and there's a limit to how much you can have in scenes because it will just kill the processor and it'll just make it too much. It'll take up too much memory and it just won't be realistic. And that's the reason why when you look back on PlayStation games and you look back on N64 games, they are literally 2 lunchboxes stuck together with a pyramid on them. And all they've done is done all the hard work with the textures. And in a lot of ways you can say it looks kind of shitty, because it kind of does, but it also has that charm of looking like that aesthetic of game design, because that's where games came from. And it's an interesting thing. But additionally, what you got to think about is the programmers go in as well, don't they, on top of this? The programmers go in there and they create areas where the player can't go so that they can't clip through the world or they can't jump through the wall. So they have to go in and put these boundaries. And I'm fascinated to see what kind of technology they use to do this. Because my only idea of what it must look like comes from RPG Maker 2005 or some bullshit, which is not a good example. But they must go in and paint or stretch or isolate some kind of way to select the geometry and say that the player can't interact with it, or the player slides off it, or the player clips against it, and there's a clipping property added. And it makes me wonder how they increase the radius of this and how do they do it quickly. Because maybe the reason that clipping is a problem is because of how much they have to apply this calculation to, and how easy it is to just kind of blanket the entire arena and just do +5 on everything. And certain things, it works beautifully. Other things, it works horribly. Like, do they not have the man-hours to go in there and select every width, every girth, every, area and perimeter and do it correctly? Is it literally a manpower versus budget issue, or is it that we don't have a system that does it correctly yet, and it's just the case of the programming's not up to scratch? I really don't know, but I am interested in it because it's one of the biggest things, I think, that can lead to a lack of enjoyment and can immediately pull you out of a game. When you get stuck on something in the heat of battle and you need to move, there is nothing in a game that is as frustrating as those instances, because I hate to say it, but it feels like there's nothing you can do. And when you take the power and the control out of the player's hand, and you get punished for that moment, that to me is unforgivable. Like, I hate knockdowns in games, and I hate knockdowns in games where they don't make you invincible, so they knock you down and they start fucking you up on the ground. Yakuza's brilliant for that, if you've ever played the Yakuza series. Oh, by the way, guys, this little tea garden down here that we're going to be coming back for a rose later on, there is a ton of turrets in this room and a ton of the tripwires, so this is definitely going to be an instance where I block a lot of things with my face and I make slow progress, but it's going to pay off because there will be no enemies that can survive this room if they spawn in it afterwards. You've got too much firepower. And the only issue you've got here is a lot of the modelling is so full of flowers and so full of leaves that you can't see where the gaps in the wood are, and the turret will hit you. And you see what I mean? He's shooting me now because there's gaps in things, and I didn't know there was a gap. So you've got to definitely keep your head on a swivel and be aware of it. But being patient and taking your time in this game really pays off. And as much as they've changed the water and the reflection, look at the way the light catches that water and reflects off the surface. If the shimmering there doesn't make you excited about the visual fidelity of a game, nothing will. You need to check that pulse, dude. It looks so nice, and it's not even, the best looking water, but I love the way the light catches on it. Oh, very pretty. What was I talking about? Video games, difficulty. Clipping. Clipping's a nightmare. We don't like clipping. Games that knock you down. Yakuza, there we go. So, Yakuza series. I've got a piece of footage that I meant to share a long time ago and I haven't, as I dodged this camera, which I should be taking photos of, but I don't. If you're going for maximum research, take pictures of the turrets before you hack them, take pictures of the camera before you break them. I don't. I don't know why. I'm an idiot. I forgot, I guess. Same with the Little Sisters. I kept forgetting you could take pictures of the Little Sisters. You might want to do that. Turns out it's useful. But this game does have a New Game Plus feature, which I think they added for PS3. So you can go back through and you can get your research on a second run without having to do all the ones you've done, which is wonderful. I really like that. I like New Game Plus. I think devs should pay more attention and do more things. I think Souls revolutionised New Game Plus in a lot of ways, and then went on to never do it as well as they did it in previous games, which baffles my mind. But Yakuza, let's talk about it. So, somebody was kind enough to tell me where I could get a save for Yakuza 5 so that I could unlock the ultimate missions without doing the missions. And this might sound a little misleading and a little cheaty, and it is. I didn't want to play them because I think the missions are shitty. But the ultimate ones that you unlock once you do all the crap ones is Boss Rush. And I love me some Boss Rush. I'm an old Capcom guy, so that sounds like my cup of tea. And you can fight every boss you fight with Kazuma Kiryu in a row, and I love it. You can't change the difficulty, so it's on like scrub tier difficulty, but it's still really fun. And I wanted to get a no damage of every boss, and I've done about 4 out of 7, and the problem is, you can't restart. So when I get hit, I have to die and do them all again. And it's one of these things where I did maybe 10 runs, and on the 10 runs, the first run I had no damage to 2 of the bosses, the second run I had no damage to 2 other bosses, and so on. And I'm going to do like a super edit of them all. It's not going to be one run because I'm not some psychopath amazing gamer, because it's impossible. If you've ever played Yakuza, you know how flippant the AI can be with how the bosses work. And there are 2 bosses that I'm having a trouble with. And the reason for it is they have these weird dodging sweep moves that trip your leg. And they trip you, and then they kick you when you're on the ground. And I hate it. I hate being knocked down. I hate not being able to instantly recover. And I hate somebody beating me up when I'm on the ground. And on Yakuza, people can stamp on you and shit. And you can stamp on them, so it is fair. It's just frustrating. And that is a boss where I don't know how to engage him because he's got this kind of counter bullshit. And it's the dance instructor from Haruka's section of Yakuza 5. He does that weird side shuffle capoeira bullshit where he trips your foot. And he's really difficult to just attack because he dodges. And he doesn't engage you unless you turn your back. And it's really bullshitty. But I'm probably going to share what I've got of that. And maybe not do them all no damage. But some of the good fights are really, really cool. But Yakuza's an example of a game where they knock you down and then they damage you on the ground. I really don't like that kind of design. I think it's really cheap. It reminds me of the good old days of Gears. If you ever played Gears 1 multiplayer, I speak about it all the time because if I'd have been into YouTube when I first got a 360, I would have had maybe over 1,000 Gears of War multiplayer videos because that's what I was doing all the time. And same with Lost Planet. I played a lot of Lost Planet online. Just loved it for some reason. Ghost Recon 2, Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter 2, played that online all the time. 50 cal Barrett. I was a sniper that made people's life miserable, and I had a lot of fun as I get everybody on me here by triggering an alarm, which is not so great. Ooh, that's something I need to talk about before I continue that tangent. You invent. So once you get to Arcadia, you're going to notice that you pick up scrap. You pick up empty brass cables, you pick up measurements of tube, you pick up all kinds of weird sundries that you're probably not going to be sure what they are if you've never played. Well, when you go to U-Invent, there's a whole plethora of ammunition and resources that you can make by combining the scraps. And it's nowhere near as in-depth as some video games, but it's enough to be awesome. So it really makes discovering things, exploring, and looting precious, because you can get all kinds of great resources in abundance, which is always a comfortable position to be in. There's also an achievement or a trophy for making 100 things, so feel free to build as much as you can, to hoard those resources, and just to pick up everything that shines. You've got to really embody your inner magpie, and it will pay dividends in your ammunition supply, so fill those bandoliers with goodies from all the shit you pick up, and you'll have a really fun time. I recommend it a lot. I recommend Electric Book, because it's great at stunning Big Daddies, and I recommend the Electric Gel if you can build it, and I recommend the Heat-Seeking Missiles for the grenade launcher, because they do massive damage to the final boss, and they do massive damage to the Big Daddies, so really, really fun tools. But in Gears 1, saying you've never played this, and you know what I think I'm going to do? I think I'm going to tweet or put out a video on YouTube or something like that, where I'm going to implore the people who turn up to the streams. Like, I generally can get like 70 to 100 people on a good stream. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people that have probably got a 360. So I'm going to send out like a mass incentive for people to run out and pick up Gears 1 for like 50p from GameStop or from Walmart or something. And I'm going to arrange like a stream day where we all get in and it's just an awesome day of us killing each other on classic Gears and having a ton of fun. And I think that could be a really, really good event to do. Because even if you don't like Gears, it can still be really goofy, because lag is massive in that game, host is massive in that game, but it's also full of just really weird, goofy shit that only Gears really captured for me personally. All the sequels lost that, but the first one is just goofy shit, and the difference between a good player and a new player is really, really high. So if we get a few pros in there, we'll have to make sure that they're on separate teams and they can help some of the weaker dudes. But I think we can have some real fun with that, because I love Gears, I really do, and I need to get seriously because I want that goddamn gamer picture, but I'm too lazy. It's ridiculous. But back in Gears 1 days, there was something known as the two-piece, and it was famous. It was famous because it felt like cheating. And the shotgun in that game is ridiculous. It is a melter of men. You go up to people, if the shotgun gives you that classic spray and that good spray and you're on an average connection to whoever you're trying to shoot, they will turn into chunks of meat. You will turn them into dinner, basically. And there was a way that you could do it where you could guarantee that they would essentially die because there wasn't much they could do. So if you ran up to somebody and you were close enough, if they had their back to you or they'd not seen you, if you punched them, on Gears there was this really annoying flinch where when you get punched, you look away for a second and you cannot move. It's a stun, complete stun. And then before you can move, they shot you with a shotgun. And it became literally a two-piece. There are variants of two-pieces in every competitive game. And they're always the bane of players' lives, because somebody runs up to you, punches you once, and before you've had a chance to move, they shoot you. And because the melee it put you to almost half damage, and then the shotgun finished you off every time. And it was impossible to get out of, essentially, because once you got clipped, you were done. And it led to moments, and you could do it with a snub as well if you were good enough and you had a good trigger finger. It led to moments where, if you had a good connection or you were host, you could run into a room of 3 people and win by knocking them and shooting them and knocking them and shooting them, and it literally felt like cheating. And they changed it in the later games. I think the first hit didn't stun you, and the second hit did on like Gears 3, something like that. They made it different. They changed a lot of stuff. You couldn't sprint, and shotgun cancel out of the sprint, so you couldn't do the drive-bys that made Gears 1 a fucking nightmare. Because you'd see some dude just roadie run in, and you'd see some dude who'd not seen him, and he would go through him like a buzzsaw. It was beautiful, and I used to love that, but you can't do that anymore. Because you have to stand before you can shoot, so you can't just do the awful drive-bys. And there was a lot of goofy shit in that game, but the two-piece is an example of a stun. Watch this, by the way. See that? Something collided with the physics on the telekinesis, and it didn't do what I would call proper connection on that woman. It looked weird to me, that. But when they take control away from you, it's a nightmare. And I do apologise if you don't care about Gears or you don't understand Gears, and I'm using it as something to bounce off of, but in Gears 2, they introduced smoke grenades that had an effect. I can't remember if Gears 1 had smokers. I think it did. Because I remember you started with a grenade, but it wasn't lethal because you had to pick them up. But in Gears 2, the grenades knocked you over. What a great idea that was! So, if you ever played that multiplayer, and I hope you did, when it was before they patched it, but if you chucked a smoke grenade or you stuck a smoke grenade on a wall, a dude would be running past, and he'd just get flattened, and you couldn't do it, and it took like 10 seconds to recover. So you could watch his eyes glisten, and his tooth come out of the side of his cheek as he smiles, because he runs over to you, and just kills you instantly with shotgun. And everybody started with a grenade that could do this. So it just became this clusterfuck of everybody on the bellies just flopping around like carps, like Magikarp or some shit, and the people swooping in and shotgunning. It was horrendous. And they fixed it, and they turned it back to the old days of where he turns away for a second and then somebody comes in and shotguns him, which is equally as annoying, but it's not as bad as that fucking getting knocked on the floor. And it leads you, doesn't it, to those questions as this turret goes to town on that tree and keeps knocking over this lady. So I'm going to make it rain and take pictures of her so I can get some new things. By the way, guys, the tonics and the plasmids do stack. Somebody left a comment. I have no idea if they're an authority on Bioshock, but they said it did, and I believed them, because they're my subscribers, and you guys are awesome, so I believe you. If this is misinformation, please correct it, if you're kind of, if this is Mr. Levine watching this video. Yes, I do enjoy your games, and I am available to be hired for any position you could need. I make a fantastic coffee and an apple martini. Hashtag sellout. But I'm always conscious of being wrong on these videos, as I check in there to see if the Houdinis are actually available to be killed early, and they're not, because this level changes once you trigger the objective. I don't like saying wrong things on my video, even though I say wrong things all the time. If it's something taste, or experience, or something unrelated, that's not a problem. I'm going to say goofy shit all the time, because it's just the nature of the beast. But when it comes to a video game I'm covering, I don't want to tell you something that's wrong, so then you go and try it and it ends up affecting you negatively. But it's so difficult to talk on every one of these videos and make sure everything I say is correct. It's one of the many pitfalls of doing it like I do it. So for things like the tonics, when I wasn't sure if they stacked, they could stack, and that guy said they did, so I believe him, but there's every chance that he's somebody who's wrong or who's trolling, and I'm not saying that he is, it's just this is the internet where you never really know. So I always like to err on the side of caution and willfully wish to be corrected, because a lot of YouTubers, when you say something, It can be a little defensive, we've all been there. But if it is something that's wrong and it needs to be corrected, I would prefer it to be corrected than stand as, my ego and my arrogance fighting back. Because there are some things that I've said in games that just aren't true, and people have corrected, and I'm really glad they have. Because it's interesting where you get this information from, but you pick it up everywhere, and everybody has, different things that they believe to be true. Like, look at good old DSP. Apparently when you save on Freedom Fighters, which is the Colorado episode of Hitman, it changes the position of the AI. I've saved on that level probably about 100 times, and it's never changed the position of the AI. I think he's just got brain damage.